When I'm very good and do as I am told, I'm Mama's little angel, and Papa says I'm good as gold. But when I'm very bad and answer back in sass, now I'm Mama's little devil, and Papa says I've got the brass. So I wish that you would tell me, but I'm far too young to know. Hi, I'm Bobby, and welcome to Dusty Old Movies. For several years, my mom and I had our tradition of watching a Joan Crawford movie every Mother's Day. It was my idea. And our very first one was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. We both loved it because it's scary, funny, and the only movie starring both Joan Crawford and Bette Davis. In 1960, Alfred Hitchcock released his huge hit Psycho, which proved that low-budget horror movies could be well-made adult entertainment. That's not what I meant. Producer-director Robert Aldrich jumped right on the bandwagon and went to Joan Crawford, whom he'd worked with before, about making a film version of Henry Farrell's suspense novel, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Joan jumped at it and suggested this movie could really use Bette Davis, too. So they sent her the script, and she thought it was the second best thing she'd ever read. And she signed on, and so became the first pairing of the legendary, strong-willed, and hard-drinking rivals, Joan Crawford and Bette Davis. Joan Crawford started her career in silent films as a flapper. Then in the 30s, her most famous roles were shop girls who struck it rich. And in the 40s, she became the tough queen of film noir. Starting off on the stage, Bette Davis relished in playing the types of roles that most actresses were too afraid to play, and was in constant battle with studio head Jack Warner to get them. Naturally, Joan and Bette's rivalry began over a man, Francho Tone. Bette developed a crush on Francho when the two were filming Dangerous, but Joan invited him to her house, and when he came in, she was completely naked. Wait to leave some mystery, Joan. They were married shortly after. Bette said that Joan Crawford slept with every male star at MGM except for Lassie. And Joan said, poor Bette, it looks like she's never had a happy day or night in her life. When Joan Crawford started working at Warner Brothers, things became worse because they were now competing for the same roles. This conflict would come to its head and be milked for all the publicity it was worth when the two made Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. In 1917, Baby Jane Hudson was a famous child actress in vaudeville. But in the early 30s, her sister Blanche became a huge movie star. However, one night after a party, they had a car accident, and Blanche became forever confined to a wheelchair. Flash forward to the groovy 60s, the two of them are still living together in a large Hollywood house, and Baby Jane is losing her mind. She psychologically and eventually physically tortures her sister Blanche, who is trapped on the second floor of their home. Jane also has a pipe dream of resurrecting her old career, and hires pianist Edwin Flagg to help. Edwin smells money and tea biscuits, so he goes to Jane's house, but has no idea of the horrors yet to come. One thing that makes Whatever Happened to Baby Jane so compelling is its weird atmosphere, which is a mixture of slow burn horror and campy humor. The movie takes its time and starts off like a regular drama, but as Jane becomes crazier, Blanche's situation becomes more horrifying and more desperate. This approach is so creepy because it allows Jane's transformation from being a little different to murderous seem realistic. And it's so gradual that Blanche, who's in denial at the beginning, does not realize just how dangerous Jane is until it's almost too late. While it's genuinely creepy, there's also plenty of dark comedy. Some of it is just from the pure campiness of what's going on, but there's also a lot of witty lines and clever dialogue. Hi, Elvira, how are you? Fine. Oh, you've seen Jane. A slow burn horror film runs the risk of being boring in the non-scary scenes, but the humor keeps it constantly entertaining. And because it's so intricately combined with the horror, often being part of the horror itself, especially with the character Baby Jane, it makes this atmosphere like no other. Also making this film like no other is its incredible cast. Much like King Kong vs. Godzilla, the big draw is the pairing between legends Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, who are both amazing as Baby Jane and Blanche Hudson. Baby Jane is an emotionally disturbed and alcoholic former child star who likes to drink scotch while making Blanche's breakfast. Hey, coffee stains your teeth. And is still living in the past. Bette Davis plays her to over-the-top perfection. She is psychotic and cruel, but there's also this childlike quality about her that makes her strangely endearing. Blanche! The police are looking for Elvira! It wasn't my fault! She wouldn't go away! I don't know what to do, Blanche! I don't know what to do! Wait, I know! We could go live at the beach on the seashore! Bette brings so much to this role. Her screen presence, the makeup design was hers with the idea that Jane never washed her face but just kept adding more makeup on. And she brings that great Bette Davis line delivery, which makes Baby Jane a frightening and hilarious villain. While Bette is a theatrical ball to watch, it is Joan Crawford's more subtle portrayal of Blanche Hudson whom we identify with. Blanche Hudson is a wealthy former movie star who is now living a nightmare, and Joan plays her with a movie star charm, a desperate fear, and a quiet strength. You wouldn't be able to do these awful things to me if I weren't still in this chair. But yeah, Blanche, you're in the chair. And what are these awful things I'm supposed to be doing to you? Joan was a fighter in real life, and it shines through. However, Joan also brings this thinly implied dark side to her character, where she can be just as cold as Jane. Think about the constant buzzing of the buzzer in a room. And this not only makes her character more interesting, but it really pays off in the end with the twist ending, where it is finally revealed that Joan Crawford is a man. Just kidding. On screen, the two work so well together. The best example is when Jane imitates Blanche's voice. For that, they had Bette move her mouth with a Joan Crawfordy smile, and they used Joan's real voice over it. But Joan overdoes her sweet voice, so it seems like she's being made fun of. They're in such unison, and it also shows off that Joan did have a sense of humor about some things. However, off-screen, things did not go quite so swimmingly. Poor Robert Aldridge would receive phone calls from them every night complaining about the other one. During the scene when Bette had to kick Joan Crawford on the floor, Bette aimed right for Joan's head. And finally, when they were preparing to do the scene where Bette Davis had to carry Joan Crawford, Bette Davis warned Joan, "Don't be a dead weight, because I have a very bad back." So Joan put weights in her pocket to make herself heavier and sent Bette to the hospital for 2 days. Revenge is a dish best served with Pepsi. While the two women are the initial appeal, newcomer Victor Buono more than holds his own as the possibly gay, overweight, and sleazy pianist Edwin Flagg. Victor is so hilarious and has great chemistry with both his doting mother, played by Marjorie Bennett, whom he's constantly annoyed by, and with Bette Davis, whom he thinks is weird, but for the money is going to be nice to. "I'll bring you some tea. You like tea?" "Oh yes, I'm quite fond of tea. You must have guessed that I'm English." "Oh really? How nice for you." Victor's facial expressions are so funny, and he really elevates the movie every time he's on screen. Also elevated in the movie is his Hollywood backstory element. Like Sunset Boulevard, which came out about 12 years before this, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane is a Hollywood backstory featuring real Hollywood legends. There is a scene where some studio executives are watching a Baby Jane movie in a screening room. And in reality, they're showing clips from the old Bette Davis films Parachute Jumper and Ex-Lady. And there's a scene where some people are watching an old Blanche Hudson movie on TV, and it's actually from Joan Crawford's Sadie McGee. While the story is fictional, these elements give Baby Jane a true-life biography feel, which makes it more interesting and sets it more firmly in reality. And with horror, generally the more real it feels, the scarier it is. The movie was a huge hit and launched a whole new subgenre of horror, the psycho Bette film, which featured crazy old ladies killing people. It has also gone on to become a cult favorite, especially with gay audiences. Bette Davis and Victor Buono were both nominated for Oscars, and Bette was sure she was going to win. However, Joan volunteered to accept the award for Anne Bancroft, and when Anne won, Joan said to Bette, "Step aside, I have an Oscar to accept." The feud continued for the rest of their lives, and when Joan died, Bette said, "You should only speak good of the dead. Joan Crawford is dead. Good." Whatever Happened to Baby Jane has everything about old movies that I love. Great stars, witty dialogue, and an incredible atmosphere. And I give it 4 Baby Jane dolls out of 4. Thank you for watching Dusty Old Movies, and have a ghoulishly groovy day!